All right, well, let's make a start. Good morning, everybody. Thank you very much for joining our Asia Pacific Cafe today. My name's Gemma Van Hougen. I'm the Director of the Statistics Division here in ESCAP, based in Bangkok. And it's a real pleasure to have you with us today. We're bringing with you just a bit of housekeeping. We'll run for about an hour and a half, and we have allowed a good 15-20 minutes for questions and discussion amongst ourselves at the end of 4 presentations. Please, if you have any questions, put them in the chat box as we go along. It's along the top of the MS Teams. There's a little chat function which will bring you up a chat box. We will be monitoring the chat box and happy to answer questions when we get to the Q&A. It's also just a reminder to this cafe will be recorded, and we'll be putting the recording on the website so that we can all go back and access this extremely valuable resource. I keep a reminder to please keep yourself on mute if you can throughout, so that our speakers, we can hear you all clearly. And if you do have any bandwidth problems with your internet, we recommend you keep your video off, except for the speakers. But if you do have bandwidth problems, keeping yourself on video off also helps with the bandwidth. So any other, and again, the team will keep you updated with who the speakers are and what topic they're covering in the chat box. So it's a real pleasure to bring this cafe to you today on the topic of COVID-19 and what impact it may be having through mode effects on your official statistics. It's brought to you not only by ESCAP, but we're working very closely with an important group under the Statistical Commission called the Inter-Secretariat Working Group on Household Surveys. So this working group, who we have with us here today, Howie Chen, who you see on the screen. We also have Christopher Hoy from the World Bank. The World Bank and UN DES's Statistics Division co-chair this group with several countries to really give us, the global statistical community, including here in Asia Pacific, some support on household surveys, with a particular focus on household surveys, but also they do touch on censuses as well, like the population census that many of you are currently undertaking. So Howie's just going to spend a few minutes now introducing what the working group is, and then we'll hand over to our first speaker. Howie, over to you. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Gemma. First of all, I'd like to thank you for really working with us collaboratively on this webinar. So it's really great collaboration. We look forward to further collaboration with your office. And I see that both Francesca and Jara are here. So if you'd like to say something, or please feel free to add. So I will only spend 5 minutes on my presentation, so we leave more time for more discussion later on. Briefly about our group. So our group was established by the Commission, as Gemma said, in 2015. With 3 main objectives. The first one is to improve coordination of surveys, both at the national level and international level. And the second one is advance survey methodologies to bring innovations to the field of household survey, and also to scale up innovative approaches in all countries. And the third one is really to enhance communication and advocacy. So we're there to advocate for the work of our members, advocate for the importance of household surveys, and also advocate for innovative approaches. So our current co-chairs are UN Women at the World Bank. It was previously led by ILO and UNICEF, and the secretary is UNSD. And we have 11 international agencies as members, and 8 new member states joining us. So As all of you know, I'm going to go really quickly. Many countries, according to a survey carried out by UNSC, the World Bank, on National Statistical Offices, that many countries, large percentage of countries, have to stop the face-to-face data collection during COVID because of COVID. And many have adopted innovative approaches by using different modes or using other data sources. So we are particularly interested in this webinar is the mode of data collection. So you can see that phone surveys and web surveys have been really adopted by many countries in the world. So are these changes here to stay? And we would like to think so, but there is a caveat. Because phone survey and web surveys, they are different from face-to-face surveys. We all know that. And the questionnaire, the length of survey using telephone is extremely short, and the maximum attention that you can get from our interviewees or households are probably 20 to 30 minutes. And face-to-face, you have a lot longer time you can spend with them. So there's a lot of difference in questionnaire design, the flow of the questionnaire. Sampling frame might be very different, and the coverage might be very different. Many households do not have phone numbers, so they tend to be poor household. So we have a coverage problem, and we also have seen from many country experiment that non-response is quite high for telephone interviews. And there's this also a mode effect. Most people in the academic world call this really, people might respond even if it's the same persons responding to different types of questionnaire, whether it's face-to-face, you have somebody there, or a telephone interview or web interview, they tend to respond differently. They might respond differently. So how do we really assess the difference, the impact of mode effect based on so many different aspects? How do we assess the difference? So that's why we have wonderful speakers that's coming up. They are going to present the different ways they've used to assess the impact of mode changes on their data. Now, so what's next? Now we're still under COVID, but we would like to see that countries adopt a design-based approach, and most likely there will be a mixed mode data collection. So we can use telephone or web interview approach in certain households to really make households very more efficient, but also at the same time really thinking, take into consideration the more vulnerable population groups that do not have access to internet or telephone. So a mixed mode data collection, and also build a smarter questionnaire that allow for multiple mode, at the same time thinking larger in a larger picture that household survey as part of a larger data ecosystem. So data integration is definitely in the picture. And what do we would like to see that countries invest in? Really, from our experience and country feedbacks, there are a lot of challenges of building sample and frame for phone and web surveys. And also we need to build relevant tools and protocols for phone and web surveys. And with all advances in data collection, there are a lot of paradata coming from data collection. Can we use that to assess our quality, really ensure that quality are good quality for quality assurance purposes? And we need to do a lot of experiment to assess the mode effect, really control the experiment to really tease out the real mode effects. A lot of investment in ICT infrastructure and capacity building. So lastly, what's the role of Inter-Secretariat Working Group on Household Surveys in all this? How can we help? Promote and really consolidate methodological standards and best practices, and then we bring that to the STAC Commission and for their endorsement and for countries buy-in. And this we really consider is so important to partner with our regional commissions. Really help agencies and countries coordinate and make the knowledge diffusion to ensure that innovative approaches are scaled up, and then ensure that all countries can adopt them. Lastly, and our group has put forth worked on a shared vision on positioning household survey in the next decade. It's a background document to be submitted to the UN STAC Commission this year. Just last words, we had to demonstrate our work. We had a new publication, brand new, this month. is really to provide guidance on how to plan and implement household survey under COVID, and having in mind health concerns, and make sure that our enumerators and also households are not impacted by the virus. And the other one is really our members' help to the COVID impact surveys. On our website, we have put together and all the surveys our members have been helping countries. So we have been working with more than 180 countries and through 530 surveys. And this website information also helps in really coordinate better our work and foster collaboration of this type of survey. With that, I've wrapped up. I hope I've done it in 5 minutes. Thank you, Gemma.
Wonderful. Thank you very much, Howie, and thank you very much for the DESA Stats Division and the World Bank and UN Women for leading this Inter-Secretariat group. It's my now great pleasure to introduce Nora Lisa from DOSM, the Department of Statistics, Malaysia. Malaysia have been doing a lot of work on this area of household surveys. You saw they're a member of the Inter-Secretariat work, and so without further ado, it's my great pleasure, please, to hand over to Nora Lisa and step us through your response. Thank you very much. And we can see your slides. Oh no, we've just missed them. Yep.
All right. Hold on. Okay, can you see my slide?
Yes, but not in slideshow mode again. It's back in PowerPoint mode.
Is it okay now?
Yes, now perfect. Thank you very much. Over to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Gemma. Distinguished panelists and ladies and gentlemen, I'm Nora Lisa, currently working with Malaysian Bureau of Labour Statistics under Department of Statistics Malaysia. So firstly, I would like to take this opportunity to especially to thank UNSC, ISWGHS and also ESCAP for inviting Department of Statistics Malaysia to participate into this Café. So our focus area is COVID-19, introducing mood effects into official statistics. To me, it's such an important topic that change or transform our normal way in producing official statistics to the new normal. Thus, for my session, I will share how the pandemic impact the production and dissemination of Malaysia's official statistics, particularly in labor market information, and the way we respond to urgent requests for most recent and holistic statistics to evaluate the impact of the global health crisis to the national labor market landscape. In the next, I believe, like 10 minutes, I will bring this session into a brief background on the COVID-19 situation in Malaysia, the containment measures and impact to Malaysia's labor market landscape, and then the action being taken by Department of Statistics Malaysia in ensuring the continuity of good quality and holistic labor market information. In the third part will be on the labor market data enhancement following of the pandemic, and the final part is the conclusion. So ladies and gentlemen, after 1 year, Malaysia is still on full-fledged fight against COVID-19. To contain the spread, the Malaysia's government had taken the movement control order, or in short here we call it MCO, by restricting the movement of the people, which also imposed by majority, which I believe also imposed by the majority of the government in the world. So as you can see in the slide, for Malaysia, it was started 18 March last year and has undergone various phases. For on the left side, 7 weeks in MCO, or people will call it like total lockdown, with during that time only essential services were allowed to operate. And we continue to the second phase, CMCO, where all economic sector and business activity operation were allowed. And then later on, we in the recovery MCO starting June until December 2020 with the allowance of interest travel and commercial activities. And then in addition, during the RMCO, actually the government has also taken an action to implement CMCO, enhanced CMCO, targeted enhanced MCO in selected state and district because of the increased number of COVID-19 cases. And this year, again, we are back in the phase of MCO, which we call MCO 2.0 until 4th February. Just like many other countries in the world, I believe all these containment measures to impact the businesses as well as the labor market. So the Malaysia's economy, if I could share, recorded a double decrease in second quarter last year. And now it's continued to its recovery momentum with a smaller decrease in the third quarter. And of course, for the labor market, after continuously in full employment since 1995, Malaysia actually recorded unemployment rate less than 4%. And last year, following of the pandemics, our unemployment rate hovering above 4%, with the highest unemployment rate recorded 5.3% in May. And in contrast, we saw a decrease in number of employed persons. The impact faced in the labor market, I believe also around the globe, mainly due to the business closure, layoff, job losses, and cancellation of phasing of new hires. So, such very unprecedented event that no one experienced and become new challenges to the National Statistics Office in ensuring continuity of good quality and holistic official statistics, including labor market data. As we all aware, the Labour Force Survey is the major and established data source in measuring the labour supply and potential groups in the country. For Malaysia, it has been collected for almost 4 decades, with the transition of frequency from annual, quarterly, and now in Malaysia, it is collected on monthly basis. So during the pre-crisis, more than 2/3 or 75% of the selected respondents were interviewed face-to-face, while remaining of 25%, their data were collected using CATI, Computer-Assisted Telephone Interview. The collected data we processed using DOSM's National Enterprise-Wide Statistical System, which allowed access only in secure office environment. Nevertheless, during the crisis with movement restriction, it has challenged DOSM to become more innovative in collecting and processing the labor force data, where when we were in phase of strict movement control order, have led a suspension to all face-to-face interviewing activities, while data couldn't be processed using the same platform as we were instructed to, office were instructed to close. So to overcome these issues and challenges, we optimize the automation, we optimize the telephone interview, and we also embark with the web-based data capturing and processing. Does this unprecedented event impact the response rate? Yes, it is. If during pre-crisis, the response rate was consistently very high, during the crisis, we must ensure we must ensure that the response rate is sufficient, comply with the minimum requirement. If not, it is not reliable to infer, to tell about the populations. So the advantage that DOSM have is we continuously, all this while, it's been a continuous effort in updating the phone numbers in household sampling frame, help to obtain labor force survey responses. So thus, by having that thing is actually become the advantage to us to ensure that we still can collect data through labor force survey. In addition, to ensure the consistency in terms of the coverage, data collection and processing, we all continuously circulate or issue latest circular to guide, especially for our DOSM state officers to deliver their tasks, especially in data collection. So, in response to urgent requests for new information, we modified the questionnaire by introducing the questions that can fulfill requirements, particularly on the impact of COVID-19 and the containment measures towards the labour force and also the potential labour force. So the modification involve identification of reasons for temporary layoff due to movement restrictions, working during the reference week, and then status of the salaries and wages benefit received, whether they receive in full or certain percentage, because this was the question that we received from the government, especially how do they how did the pandemic impact the employment. So we have to measure about this information, and the last one, last job information with MCO period, including industry and the status of employment. And this question will allow us to identify various aspects. For example, layoff by industry, job skill category affected, and etc. New data collected help us actually in deep dive the impact of pandemic and MCO to the labour supply. So, from the perspective of data dissemination, DOSM enhance our deliverables. As much as possible, we facilitate our users with improvement in the infographic with additional time series chart, so that it will give clearer picture to the user. And then a detailed monthly report to explain on the labour force situation. Previously was only 1 to 2 pages. So during the crisis, we have produced more detail in terms of the report, more elaboration in media statement to inform public about the current situation of the labour market. And also we produce short video for each release to tell story on labour force. DOSM also introduced live streaming on DOSM Facebook, so that we can have a direct communicate with the public if they have further question about the data release. And one thing is very significant also is we provide information paper regularly to our Economic Action Council to highlight on specific issues related to labour market. So when we are talking about meeting requirement of the stakeholders, DOSM escalate enhancements and innovates the dissemination of labour market information. So we do transformation on monthly labour force report, as I mentioned just now. We introduce new indicator monitoring labour supply on time related and skill related underemployment, which we have never produced before. And starting first quarter of last year, we introduced quarterly labour market review report, which consists of 3 segments of labour supply, demand and productivity. And also we encourage article writing. So we produce more papers to about the labour market, so that with this input will help in terms of for informed decision making, especially by the government. Okay, so COVID-19 as an eye-opener of for labour market data enhancement. So facing this issue, it opened our eyes so that we can't solely rely on the primary data or survey data. We need to leverage on administrative record and big data sources as a potential ways to complement survey data, because the way they want to the government want to have the data is as much as possible, they want the most recent data. So second one, strengthening of sampling frame and refinement of methodology for sampling design and survey instrument to measure specific interest. Continuous modification of information collected. So we cannot just stick with the main one. We must continuously introduce, do some modification of the questionnaire, so that we can collect more recent, current need of the data. System development for the processing, for the analysis should be more dynamic and flexible to ensure that fast data capture, processing, analysis and dissemination, and also the importance of the granular data. Thus, data can be disaggregated to meet the needs of different situations. So, What importance about the eye-opener of the labour market data advancement previously is NSO have the position to drive the demand for labour market data, whereby we can identify the issue and we can highlight the issue for the government, especially to do for better decision making. So, as a conclusion for my presentation, the first one, the role of NSO has been extended beyond data collection, processing and dissemination through involvement in policy discussion. During the pre-crisis, during the crisis, we involved a lot with the all policymakers, and NSO has become focal point to support labour market policy, and this is the way for NSO to remain relevant during these unprecedented events. The second one is leveraging on the multiple data sources for comprehensive labour market information. So we need to data integration between census and survey data as well as administrative records in related agency in one single platform. This is something that currently in Malaysia we are embarked so that we can have a very good data integration among all other agency, and this project is currently in progress in Malaysia. And the third one, to embark on the R&D research development and refinement of statistical methodology, as well as enhanced analytics capacity. So to do this, we strengthen collaboration with academicians, industry players, other NSO, and also international organizations. So during this COVID, this pandemic situation, the request for the role of the NSO is not only on the profiling data, it's broaden the statistical analysis beyond data profiling. To include also modeling and forecasting. And all this is actually has challenged official statistics to become more proactive and to diversify their role, and hopefully it can bring us to the next level, and to ensure that NSO will remain relevant during unprecedented events. With that, Gemma, I will conclude my presentation. Thank you so much for your attention. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Nora, and wonderful presentation. For our people online in the cafe, if you have any questions, please do put them in the chat box, and we'll come back to them in the Q&A, or we'll monitor them and try and address them during the rest of the presentation. But I'd just like to summarise by saying what a great presentation we have from Nora, and a really good example of how COVID-19 pandemic has been an opportunity for the Malaysian Statistics Office to strengthen their policy dialogue with users, introduce new services, as we just heard, around forecasting and modelling, and also innovate with trying to bring in new data sources such as big data and apply data integration. So, and also a really big opportunity to showcase and build the skills of your staff through particularly around improving communication and dissemination. And I was very pleased to see on your slide there a very good paper prepared by DOSM on experimental measures of gig workers that was prepared over the last few months. So congratulations for so many reasons, and really great showcasing of all the work you've done there. So thank you very much, Nora. Wonderful presentation.
Thank you, Gemma.
We're now going to zoom up to Korea, to South Korea and the Republic of Korea, and we have Director from Korea, Siyu Kim, who actually is technically currently in New York, but will bring to us now a presentation on Korea's response to the impact of COVID on household. Over to you. Thank you very much, Siyu.
Thank you, Gemma. Okay. Thank you, Gemma, and then thank you for inviting me to this wonderful webinar. Yeah. Hi, everyone. Good morning and good afternoon and good evening. As I was introduced, I'm Soyoung Kim from Statistics Korea, and then currently working at the UNFPA as a second-year technical advisor. I'm very glad to have a chance to share a Korea case study with you. Yeah, today I'm gonna introduce how we conducted a field survey and then what happened there and then what we learned from the last year. I'm not gonna talk about it in detail, but I would like to share our great experience last year with you. Yeah, last year is wonderful, not wonderful. Yeah, we have been going through hectic times since last year, right? And a lot of things happened in survey fields and national statistical offices around the world as well. So what happened in South Korea? In Korea, the first shock of the pandemic was around March through April last year. This season of the year is so busy to start prepare several main household surveys, such as labor force surveys and household finances and living conditions, and other surveys regarding household information. And these surveys are technically based on the face-to-face survey, but conducting surveys using face-to-face under the pandemic was a big deal last year. So we did discuss a lot about how and whether or not to do surveys. So we had three options: to skip them, delay them, or keep doing the surveys. So we finally decide to keep going because the household surveys are so time sensitive to users, especially for governments and policies. In order to do this, we couldn't help but to use mixed modes, right? Like a telephone survey, self-administered, or internet survey. Oh no, sorry. But applying mixed mode in a survey was a great option, but there was a lot of concerns about how to implement them in the field out of blue. So we changed a lot on survey preparations. For example, we have done interviewer training in a collective manner as a user, but with smaller groups. We're using both online and offline training materials. Also, we created a new survey guidelines and instructions for households selecting non-context survey modes. We also developed ways about how to check response quality after using new survey modes. Lastly, we explored the response quality again through thorough data editing using external data like administrative data. If we found some aberrations, we repeatedly checked that the data quality met the standard for official statistics. In this way, the field survey last year was like an adventure in a jungle, and we were still working on, and we are also learning. Yeah, but last year we tried to use mixed mode in several household surveys, but here I'm gonna share with one of them with you the case of household finances and living conditions survey. The survey is very representative household survey in South Korea. And then also last year I was in charge of this survey until being seconded to UN. And this annual survey depicts the household economic situations, including incomes, expenditures, assets, liabilities, etc., through asking 180 questions in person from around 200,000 households across the nation. We normally adopt the internet survey mode as well, but most of households prefer the face-to-face method due to the survey complexities. The survey adopts the 5-year panel sampling design. The panel consists of 5 sub-sample groups. Each panel group works for 5 years as a sample, and one group is replaced by a new one every year. But also, the survey utilizes administrative data on income and some expenditures. Last year, this survey fell during the onset of the pandemic. Last year, the March is a very peak in South Korea. To deal with this, we set the main goals. One was to safely complete this survey despite the crisis, maintaining the user response rate level is possible. The other was to prevent the spread of the virus while doing the survey and to protect our staff and household from the virus. So we built some standards of action as the chart below displays. We came up with the actions for survey process in the areas of planning and preparations, field operations, and quality control. Through this action, we were able to monitor the regional situations and the response to them. Secondly, we allowed mixed survey modes in this survey that we hadn't used until then, according to the preferences the households. I can show you the result. As followed the prescribed actions, we safely completed the survey against the pandemic, maintaining the user response rate around 90%. I gotta say, our high response rate under the pandemic is because of allowing mixed mode. It was kind of challenging because we hadn't done any pilot survey or pre-test to adopt mixed mode in this survey before. An interesting thing was during the survey time, and there was a reasonably limited COVID impact. The COVID impact started becoming mild around April in Korea, except for both the Daegu and Gyeongbuk provinces. Interestingly, 22% of respondents answered through a non-contact mode. The share of this mode grew by 18% compared to last year. The most of non-contact respondents preferred a self-administered mode. The share of this mode was 14%. This chart shows the participation share by non-contact respondents in different provinces. The red means that is for 2020, and then blue is for 2019 data. Daegu and Gyeongbuk, if you look at the graph, was in special control regions at the time, so they showed significantly larger shares of non-contact survey mode uses. It is no surprise because using a non-contact mode was mandatory in Daegu, and then in Gyeongbuk, it was also a hotspot, but milder than Daegu. It was strongly encouraged using a non-contact mode. But the figures are a little lower than the Daegu because Gyeongbuk provinces include the rural areas where many seniors live and they preferred in-person mode. If you look at the table by household characteristics, the participation through a non-contact mode was higher in households that have 3 or more household members, and household head was younger than 50. If you look at the table, you can compare the result. These two characteristics, in fact, could be confounded when they select a mode, so we cannot discern from each other. Now, these two graphs show a household's average income by a contact or non-contact respondents in 2020 survey. In the graph, the blue is income for the contact household, and then the red is income from a non-contact household. Income in non-contact household is higher than in contact household, and income gaps between the two groups has similar patterns. The patterns is regardless of age groups and regions. We compared several age groups, but the pattern was very similar. If you look at the graph below, the income gap in Daegu looks way bigger than in others, but it is no surprise because Daegu is a big metropolitan city in Korea, so it just appears to stand out. So why is overall?
Excuse me, we're getting quite a lot of feedback on your microphone. Maybe if you could just try and keep your microphone near your mouth. We're just getting a lot of clicker on your. I'm not sure where your microphone is. Yeah, thank you very much.
Sorry. So it's clear now?
That's great. Thank you very much.
Okay. So why is overall income is non-contact household higher than the other? It could be that household is younger groups or those living in urban area tend to select non-contact modes. These groups tend to be higher educated, better jobs, and better paid, or they have a double income. These two graphs show the relationship between the two income result patterns, income by survey result alone and income by result after adjusting the survey result in the administrative data. The blue is the income for the survey only, and then the red is income, the result after adjusting the with administrative data. I'm not going to talk about how to use administrative data in the survey in detail. It could be another interesting or long story. 2020 income came from the multiple survey, and the 2018 and 2019 incomes were based on only face-to-face survey. So as it turns out, over the 3 years, the gaps between the result in blue and in red have similar tendencies. The gap is very similar. Then let's look at the similar graph below. It shows the coverage rate of survey result over the adjusted result. It says income for 3 different modes show the difference from one another. From this, we could say they might not be mode effect in survey result. To sum up, after many complications, we successfully conducted the survey under COVID-19 by using mixed modes. We couldn't find critical disparities in terms of response result by survey modes. Several reasons could be considered for just the real differences of response result from each mode. One step partially, the response error associated with a non-contact mode was mostly eliminated during the course of a field survey or editing. Additionally, a non-contact mode could dispose of the interviewer effect and provide more time for respondents to complete a survey, which would affect the accuracy of survey result and decrease the response burden. However, for some reason last year, we did not think to save more data at intervals along the way before editing. I think it's a shame that we missed out on the opportunity for learning. Yeah, also we did a lot of research to get mode effect, and it turned out there were some limitations in measuring the mode effect. In this survey, the usage of non-contact modes was not evenly leveled. The regional or age-related biases or a combination of 2 or more have been observed, which entails difficulties in discerning the mode effect. And data collected through a non-contact mode was subjected to a strength editing process whereby their response errors have been corrected. It might not be of much interest, but sample size for non-contacts could not be enough to access to mode effect. Only 22% of respondents selected 3 different kinds of non-contact modes. So my colleagues went through many challenges last year, but we also saw bright sides. Actually, this survey is so complex, but we found that the non-contact mode could be acceptable for this survey officially by considering sample structures and survey characteristics. I'm not going to explain in detail. Also, this is the last slide. Using mixed mode in surveys for observed statistics will be an effective way for a future response to a worsening survey environment, including crises like COVID-19. But to use mixed mode, we should care about some parts. I want to stress one thing. We need to consider sample design or several survey characteristics befitting the non-contact mode. And then mixed mode might be more acceptable in surveys measuring facts than a subjective opinion survey, including items with social desirability or socially economically sensitive to answer. Yeah. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Si-Young. That was a very interesting presentation. I think coming straight after the one from Malaysia on the labour market surveys, extremely good to see a discussion on the possible mode effects on, as you called it, a survey more on subjective measures, and in this case, the living conditions survey, which I know many countries in the region undertake. Excellent presentation again. I really liked your phrase, this was like an adventure in the jungle, COVID-19 has been like an adventure in the jungle, and it certainly has for so many countries. But some great lessons there of being able to assess the mode effects. Here you compared contact and non-contact against some characteristics like type of household characteristics. But also a lesson there you had at the end where some of the differences might also have been due to introducing changes to your editing structure as well. So when you put so many changes into your survey program, whether it's mode or editing or follow-up, any change to a procedure can have an impact on the quality of the results. So really good lessons to share with us there. We have a question in the box, but we'll collect them and bring. You can either answer them in the chat box, Seo Young, or we'll come to them at the end of the presentation as well. I'm now going to try and hand over to the Philippines and our colleagues, the Deputy National Statistician Wilma in the Philippines. I'll just check whether we have Michelle or Benji. Is Wilma with us? Wilma. Good morning, Wilma. I'm very happy to hand over to you, Wilma. If okay, I can't quite hear you yet, Wilma. Or see your slides. Just check whether Benji or Michelle, are you able to help with the slides from Wilma? We might need to come back to you, Wilma, because I can't get you on. How about we just move to some examples now from Papua New Guinea and our colleague Chris from the World Bank, and then we'll come back to the Philippines in a moment. Chris, are we able to hand over to you?
Yes, hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you, but no slides yet, Chris.
Great, I'll just share the slides. Sorry, unfortunately I can't share the slides because it looks like I'm no longer a presenter, so I need my status to be changed, or if someone wants to get up the slides for me, that would be great.
All right. You're there now, Chris.
Great. Cool. Thank you. So, yeah, thank you very much for the opportunity to present to you all. I'm very excited to be able to share with you some of this work, and I think it complements quite nicely the discussion so far. Can you see the slides all good before I begin?
Yes, all good and in slide mode. Wonderful. Thank you.
Excellent. Great. So this work, yeah, I think, as I said, really complements what has been discussed, because Papua New Guinea is a low capacity environment. There's very limited data. One of the things to mention about Papua New Guinea is that it's the only country outside sub-Saharan Africa that's deemed by the World Bank as having extreme data deprivation. So it's quite noteworthy, just the absence of data. And the presentation I'm going to talk to you about here is like, what can you do in that sort of setting whereby there's such an absence of data, and how using mobile phone surveys as opposed to sort of household surveys, what can be done to the way we sample mobile phone surveys to ensure that it can better approximate what a face-to-face survey would be able to find, and in other words, a more representative sample. Great, well, let me jump into it now. So for those of you who don't know very much about Papua New Guinea, it has a high level of poverty, the highest level of poverty actually in East Asia and the Pacific. It's primarily rural, there's about 8 million people, and mobile phone ownership is incredibly low. So this makes it a lot harder to be able to reach people. So only 35% of the population, as opposed to 55, which is the average for low income countries. So the way how this work was conducted was actually with the largest telecommunications provider in Papua New Guinea, so Digicel, and there's been so far 2 rounds of surveys. The first round had over 3,000 respondents, and the second round had almost 3,000 respondents. But the key thing to highlight at this stage is that using random digit dialing, it shrunk from 45,000 numbers down to 3,000 people who actually responded in the first round. And then when we tried to actually contact those same 3,000 respondents, we're only able to contact 1,000 of them. And that's because people change their SIM cards incredibly often in Papua New Guinea. And this is because of the fact that the law is that you have to register your SIM card, and if you don't register your SIM card with the government after 6 months, it then gets deactivated. So most people don't register their SIM card, so then their SIM card gets deactivated, and as a result, they go get a new SIM card, new phone number, and then that's problematic for our purposes. Now, in the first round of the survey, there was done, as I said, by random digit dialing, but there was also geographically targeted. So looking at where the most recent tower was, so the mobile phone reception tower, in which that individual sort of used their phone. So you could kind of geographically target people that way. And prior to the actual survey taking place, everyone in the region received a text message saying, you can be contacted, you'll receive compensation for doing this survey. Would really appreciate it if you pick up the phone. So let me dive into, now I've given you some of the setting, let me dive into some of the challenges we face doing this. So just as the case in a lot of similar settings to Papua New Guinea, the people who own mobile phones are much more likely to be male, younger, have higher levels of education, and what I'm about to show you next is also be much more wealthy. So even if everyone picked up the phone, we already know that mobile phone owners are quite a unique subset of the population. And the way how we wanted to be able to have a better understanding as to how unique the mobile phone sample or owners are relative to the rest of the population is we relied on a demographic and health survey that was conducted in 2016 to 2018 across the country. So that's the most recent data available. So it was the best chance we had of in any way trying to be able to approximate what it actually is on the ground if we did face-to-face surveys relative to what we're relying on with mobile phone surveys. And just before I move on, I just want to clarify here, hopefully this chart's pretty straightforward, but what we're comparing here is the DHS survey. So that's the survey that's was done in person from 2016 to 2018, and then the high frequency phone survey. So that's the survey that was done by mobile phones that we did in response to COVID to get a better idea. So I really want to make sure you kind of can follow that chart there because I'm going to be referring to multiple charts along these lines to really tell this story. So as I flagged earlier, one of the biggest challenges is that the respondents to a mobile phone survey, particularly in a setting like Papua New Guinea, are much richer, right, on average, than the standard sort of if we just did a representative sample truly of the population or face-to-face surveys. And this sort of graph here shows you just how skewed that distribution is, whereby almost half of respondents are in the top 2 quintile, and only 10% of respondents are in the bottom 4 quintiles. So really skewed. And that's problematic when we're interested in understanding how COVID is impacting the poor in particular. So what can you do? Well, in the first round of the survey, there was a complex set of strategies that were used to try and re-weight the survey data to get a better understanding of what it would actually be if we did face-to-face surveys. Now, I don't need to tell the people on this call just the extent to which sort of re-weighting only gets you so far. Using a number of these steps here, which I guess in Q&A we can talk about if need be, that we're able to move from a situation whereby on the left-hand side here, this is the sort of wealth index unweighted. So this is just a different way of showing that same sort of skewed distribution that I showed you before. whereby the blue is the mobile phone survey and the red is the DHS, right? And once we did all the reweighting, we could almost approximate what the wealth index was. But yeah, as I mentioned, sort of like reweighting only gets you so far. So we're kind of not overly happy with our results of the first round of the survey. And then, as I mentioned, looking to the second round, we had lots of problems trying to re-interview the same people, which is problematic from a panel survey sort of perspective, whereby I would like to track the same people over time and understand what their experience was. But it did actually create an opportunity. And this opportunity was for us to re-sample based upon what we know sort of now about the distribution of mobile phone surveys in Papua New Guinea and just how skewed it is. And what we used was, and this is the main innovation, right, of what I'm going to be sort of mentioning to you, was we actually use the administrative data that the mobile phone surveys the mobile phone companies have. So Digicel, Papua New Guinea, the main partner that we have, they have information about, for this given phone number, do they send and receive text messages? Do they largely receive a phone call? Do they dial it themselves? When was the last time they recharged their credit, or purchased their own credit? Or did someone transfer credit over to them? And it's this sort of information that we're able to predict that it's highly likely that someone who isn't able to send text messages, people who aren't paying for their own mobile phone credit, someone else is transferring over to them, it's highly likely that they're going to be poorer on average than the normal mobile phone user. And that's, I guess, worth sort of stressing this, because it's the kind of innovation that we have, which is using the telecommunication company's own administrative data, right, about mobile phone users to better adjust our sample, right? And then what happened when we did that? Well, if you can remember before, I showed you that really skewed distribution. So that was the light blue and the orange, right? So the orange is the DHS, so the face-to-face survey that was done from 2016 to 2018. The light blue being the first round of the mobile phone survey, and that's where we had a situation whereby almost half of respondents were in the richest two deciles, right? But what the dark blue represents is what we're able to capture, right? When we adjusted the sampling technique to take into account mobile phone use and using this administrative data on the telecommunications. And while it's not perfect, we did actually increase the share of people in the bottom 4 deciles from 10 to 15%, and we decreased the share in the top 2 deciles from 48% to 39%. So sort of given the fact that this was done at no cost, really, we used the administrative data that the telecommunications company already has on mobile phone users. It just required ex ante analysis of the data, preparation, and then adjusting our sampling accordingly. That is quite an improvement for no cost, really. So the main takeaways, and I'm very happy to take questions in Q&A time. But yeah, I guess the main takeaways here is that the mobile phone surveys can be implemented even in some of the most challenging contexts. And Papua New Guinea is definitely one of the most challenging contexts you can imagine doing this in, particularly outside sub-Saharan Africa. And I guess this shows the limits of complex reweighting of surveys, but also I think it shows the potential of partnering with telecommunication companies using existing administrative data that they're sitting on this data and they're not using it, right? And we were able to, at no cost, dramatically improve the sampling in the second wave of the survey. And going forward, we're actually going to be looking to use machine learning techniques to better be able to predict, based upon previous mobile phone behaviour, whether or not you're actually rich or poor, and then actually design the sample around this sort of machine learning technique approach. But anyway, happy to talk more when the opportunity comes in Q&A. So thank you all for your time.
Wonderful. Thank you very much, Chris. That was extremely interesting, and I'm really pleased that you've shared with us the challenges, not just in PNG, but in countries where we just don't have big infrastructure and big statistical capacity to be able to deal with not only normal statistical operations, but statistical operations that have also been impacted by issues such as a pandemic, but also disasters and other impacts that affect Asia Pacific so frequently. So thank you very much for that. And highlighting to us that we just can't introduce new data sources like mobile phone data without also checking who's covered by these data sources, and that we might be introducing an inherent bias into our statistics by using big data without first checking its coverage and quality, as you've done there. I'm now very pleased that we're going to hand over to our colleagues in the Philippines. Wilma is with us, but we'll be running the slides. Hao-Yi, very kindly, thank you, Hao-Yi, has agreed to run the slides there from New York. So truly global presentation here, coming all the way from New York and from the Philippines. Wilma, I just check whether we can, we can't hear you yet, Wilma, but Hao-Yi, can you bring up the slides and then we'll get Wilma?
Yes, we're working on it. Let me see.
Okay, Hao-Yi, and Wilma, I still can't hear you, Wilma. Put your microphone, just check your microphone under devices is on the right microphone. Under the 3 dots across the top of MS Teams, there's the first setting says device settings, and just check in there you've got the right microphone on. And we still can't hear you, Wilma. I see you're not on mute, so your microphone is on, but we just can't hear you.
Are the slides okay?
The slides are okay. We just don't have Wilma microphone working. Wilma, we just check your microphone again. No, we can't hear you, Wilma. I'm not sure if Benji or Michelle's with you, able to check. Maybe Wilma, while you're trying to get your microphone to work, maybe we could ask Siyong. Siyong, if you're with us, one of the questions was whether you had checked the mode effect at a regional level, particularly at the 2 provinces that with the higher non-cut enumeration. Just wondering, while we're waiting for Wilma to try and get her microphone to work, Siyong, are you able to talk to us about whether you looked at this at a regional, provincial level? Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, actually, we checked any kind of effect for these 2 regions. But interesting, yeah, very good question. Actually, the response level was very similar to the nation level, like around 90% or something like that, under 88 or something, I remembered. But the mode effect kind of, Daegu is kind of metropolitan city, and then Gyeongbuk is kind of one of the province, including rural areas. But we found out something in Gyeongbuk provinces that there is some kind of a regional effect. I mean, we have a regional statistical offices. So Gyeongbuk and then Daegu is very different regional offices. So they follow. We give some guidelines, but they follow their own guidelines, right? So in Gyeongbuk, we didn't expect that result, but just in Gyeongbuk province, many respondents used telephone survey, but we didn't expect that because Gyeongbuk includes the rural areas. So that means they live, the seniors live there. So they don't want to telephone survey, right? But the enumerators that urged, please answer on the phone, something like that. So if we checked the data, the quality after the survey, but a little bit kind of the lower than we expected. So we are preparing now, so we more the detailed guidelines for regional the statistical offices. Yeah.
Wonderful. Thank you very much. So again, you highlighted a really good point there, Si-Yoon Kim, is that in many of the statistical systems in a country, they're decentralized, and the National Statistics Office has to rely on provincial statistical offices to roll out operations. Right. And even though the Central Statistics Office might give instructions and training and guidelines on how to do something, the provincial office may roll out procedures differently to what the capital has recommended. And so again, that also could introduce a mode effect into your survey results because of different operationalization. So many things to think about. So good editing, different approaches, different training, and so on. Good. Thank you very much for that. We just check in again on Wilma. Wilma, is your microphone working yet? I see you're not on mute, but we can't hear you. No, I still can't hear you, unfortunately. Well, I'll just explain to you again, across the top of MS Teams, about 3/4 of the way across the top, there's a little icon that's got 3 dots, ... And if you click on that ... the first action says device settings. And if you click on device settings, it will show you which microphone you were using. And we just double check that you're using the right microphone. While we're there, maybe one of the other questions here was to do with phone call aversion and this issue of, how do we get selection bias caused by call aversion effect? Chris, are you able to make any comments on that?
Yes, so thanks for the question. I just tried to comment back in the chat area. So I think that this is set into Papua New Guinea to some extent, not to the same extent as other parts of East Asia. However, we need to just do more analysis on this in future rounds, because there's a little bit of an issue whereby on the one hand, this phone call aversion effect is probably more likely to affect the wealthier respondents who have a higher opportunity cost to their time, potentially, this is our sort of thinking. You've still got the fact that the actual distribution of mobile phone users in the country is heavily skewed towards the most wealthy. So to try and figure out exactly where we land on this phone call aversion effect, we need to do more analysis. But it's definitely a great question, so thank you for raising it.
Yeah, thank you very much, Chris. And I see Wilma. Wilma, put your hand up. Wilma, are you able to, is your microphone working yet? Oh, I see we've now lost Wilma. Benji or Mitch, are you there from PSA?
Hi, good morning, Gemma. This is Mitch.
Good morning.
Yeah, can you hear me?
I can hear you. You're a bit quiet, but we can hear you, but we can't hear Wilma.
Yes, maybe I can go with the presentation.
Okay, sure. And we don't have, we only have about 10 or 12 minutes. Thanks, Mitch.
Yeah. So I'll be presenting the household survey data collection being adopted in this challenging situation. For the next slide, please. So for the background of the presentation, we'll just give a brief background on what happened in the Philippines during the COVID-19 lockdown and the specific activities. And of course, as a highlight, I will be presenting the labor force survey and adaptation to the COVID-19. Okay, so next slide, please. So as we all know, the PSA is mandated to conduct the labor force survey, which emanates from the Republic Act number 10625. So next slide, please. Next slide. Next slide, please. Yep. So just to give a brief background, back in April 2020, when the Philippines was in an enhanced community quarantine, the PSA requested for exemption from the strict restrictions. So during these times, from April 2020, it was only the PSA who is conducting surveys in the Philippines because of this exemption. So as you may know, the IATF, or the Interagency Task Force for the Management of Emerging Infectious Diseases, particularly for the COVID-19, plays entirely the biggest island group, particularly the Luzon, on a enhanced community quarantine. So this was a good development for us to conduct a survey, even though we are on a strict community quarantine. So next slide, please. So the specific activities conducted under the COVID-19 lockdown we provided estimates to the Office of the President and to the Senate Oversight Committee on the number of families that should be given social amelioration. So during this time, our government is asking for the estimates on the number of families that are under the low income class or middle income class. So the estimates considered inclusion of the middle income class in the 6th and 7th income decile. So in addition to this, we have provided the personal protective equipments to our during the data collection, and the PSA national statistician participated at the board meeting of the Paris 21 and is one of the panelists in a webinar on the SDGs organized by the Paris 21. Next slide, please. So we also included in April round of the LFS a rapid assessment questionnaire on consumers and businesses, wherein we ask questions about how they consume or how they are confident in consuming during the April round, and whether they go out for to buy items or some commodities. And we have coordination with the Department of Affairs, particularly the Office of Migrant Workers Affairs, to assist of OFWs with problems on civil registration documents during the Luzon strict restrictions. So next slide, please. So for the labor force survey and its adaptation to the COVID-19, as we all know, this is a nationwide quarterly survey of household that gathers information on the demographic and socio-economic characteristics of the population. Particularly, it provides quantitative framework on the preparation of plans and formulation of policies affecting the labor market. Next slide, please. So the changes that were implemented during the COVID-19 or the strict community quarantine was to implement strict policy on social distancing. So given this, previously we conduct our trainings face-to-face. So our trainers come to a specific area and we have trainings as face-to-face trainings. However, given this social distancing guidelines, we conducted virtual trainings for the first and second level training. However, for the face-to-face, this is trainings with the data collectors. We conduct face-to-face, but with strict social distancing. Next slide, please. So during the data collection, particularly in April, face-to-face interview is what we normally used for the data collection. However, given the COVID-19 pandemic, we explored the use of telephone interview and the computer-aided web interview. And also we have a downloadable Excel-based questionnaire. So these approaches are options to choose from, whichever is feasible and according to the respondent's choice. So like what I've presented a while ago, in the April 2020 LFS, we have a rider on the consumer and the business rapid assessment questionnaire for the National Economic and Development Authority, or our Ministry of Planning. So for our evaluation on the modes of data collection, the face-to-face interview still has the highest number of completion, followed by telephone interview, and only few of the sample households chose to use or to try Kawi or the web interview. But we are happy at least we had this experience of using the Kawi. So from July up until this time, what we are using is the face-to-face interview and the telephone interview. Given that only few are using Kawi, we have stopped using the Kawi as our mode of interview starting July 2020, as this still needs more manpower, particularly on the development of our system for Kawi. Next slide, please. So also during the data collection, we had a strict monitoring on the interview status, particularly on the refusals and whether they refuse because they are afraid of having the or they are afraid of the risk of COVID. So during the April round up until this time that we are conducting the January round during this day, and we are still doing this strict monitoring of the data collection for us to know whether we should have other modes of data collection given the interview status of the labor force survey. So next, please. So what we did, if it is possible to do the face-to-face interview, because for some areas, this is not actually on a strict lockdown, or some areas do not have COVID-19 there are no instances of COVID-19. So what we use is the face-to-face interview using the copy. And next slide, please. If the approach was to have a telephone interview, the interviewer must use any of the following. So we use the copy or the Kawi or the Excel format. So what we usually do is we still go to the households and ask them if they would choose face-to-face interview or telephone interview. So if they would allow us to have the telephone interview, then we will ask for their telephone numbers, and then we'll get back to them via call. So next, please. If it is not possible to do the face-to-face interview or the tele-in interview, then the Kawi will have to be implemented. Or if the household chose to have the data collection through Kawi, then we will be providing them the system for the Kawi. Next slide, please. So new answer categories were included in the LFS. One of the interests of the policymakers during this time, I'm sure it's all this is the main interest of all our policymakers worldwide to see the impact of our community quarantines or lockdowns due to COVID on the labor market. So how many became unemployed due to the ECQ? So in the LFS, we have included questions on, or we have included a category asking the response or the respondents on the reasons why they are working less than 40 hours or why they are working more than 40 hours. And so we included ECQ or lockdown or the COVID-19 pandemic as one of the reason of their reasons for working less than the normal hours. Next question. Also, we have included the COVID-19 or the ECQ lockdown COVID-19 pandemic as the reasons for not looking for work. Next slide, please. So for the way forward, currently we are conducting the January labor force survey, and just to give a brief information to the participants, we have included again we have included questions to our January round to this is in collaboration with the UN Women, particularly on when we ask them whether their businesses are registered or whether they are receiving unemployment benefits or other benefits from the government or other entities, and whether they are or they have health insurance or social insurance. And as a way forward, we will be measuring the gig economy. Particularly, we all know that during the COVID-19 pandemic, we have lots of Grab drivers already. So these are the participants of the gig economy. So we are quickly studying the statistical framework for this. But for now, what we did was to give a special code for those for this gig economy. But after we have a thorough study on the statistical framework, then maybe we can measure this soonest. And just to give a information to everyone that starting February 2021, we will be conducting monthly labor force surveys to have higher frequency labor and employment statistics due to COVID-19. And we will be including more questions related to the effects or the impacts of COVID-19 to the labor market. So for February 2021, we had included questions on the working arrangements. So they will be asked whether if they are employed or they are working, what is their working arrangement? Like, for example, if they are working from home or still working on their default place, like, for example, their offices, or they are on job rotation or or they are on reduced hours of work. And we also ask them whether they are temporarily unemployed or permanently unemployed. And additional questions were asked on whether they have been laid off from March 2020 to present, and if they are former OFWs, were they also laid off from March 2020 to present. So these are our this is the activities or that the PSA did in response to COVID-19, particularly for the household survey. So this year we will be conducting our family income and expenditure survey. So some questions related to the effects of COVID-19 on consumption and income will also be added. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Michelle, for stepping in there, and please do send our apologies to Wilma that we weren't able to hear her. But excellent presentation, and really good to see what you're doing there for your labour force. Very key survey for many countries, not just in our region but globally. Now, we've had a few questions that we've been able to answer throughout the time, and I'll see a few more coming in the chat box. Let me go to the first one, which was around waiting, but I also would like to invite Howie or Giro, if either of you also want to come in and address any of these questions, feel free to do so. The question that came in, it's actually a very difficult question to answer in only a couple of minutes, is how do you deal with motor effects through the waiting schemes? And we've heard today mainly about changes to the front end of the operations, changes to questionnaires, changes to editing. We've also heard changes to mixed mode of bringing data integration together, but we haven't heard a lot about how to deal with the waiting. Maybe could I ask Giro and Howie, is your group, is the Inter-Secretariat Working Group preparing any guidelines on how to deal with mode effects in waiting? Howie or Giro, can you answer that?
Howie, would you like to go?
You go ahead.
Yeah, okay. Hi, Gemma. First of all, thank you very much, like to you and colleagues at ESCAP. This has been great. No, we don't have any specific plan, but as you were saying before, also as you posted on the chat, as you know, the Inter-Secretariat works. The MO is through task forces, so we welcome ideas for work to pursue. But also we're not pursuing some of this work under the Inter-Secretariat Working Group, but there are different agencies that they are working on those issues. So we have been doing some research. Also in Latin America, there are some pieces on that. So there are the different players, different researchers working on this area. But if there is any specific interest in the region, and it's something that it can be pursued through the Inter-Secretariat, we will certainly welcome any suggestion. Yeah.
Wonderful.
Thank you.
Thank you, Giro. That was Giro from the World Bank. Sorry, I didn't introduce you. Sorry, Giro, but thank you for stepping in there.
Yes, if you want to put a face to the voice, here it is. Like a very nice.
Thank you very much.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. And so in short answer to the question from the chat around have we got any guidance on how to deal with mode effects in waiting, the short answer is at this stage no, but it's something that the Secretariat Working Group and its task teams could look at if a particular. I would recommend you reach out to your methodology group as a sampling experts to help you with that answer, because they certainly have expertise in how to do weighting across multiple data sources, including through mode effect. We also have a question now from Saeed Hazi in Statistical Research Institute in Iran, and it's to you, Michelle, around how were both families and enumerators persuaded to participate during the pandemic duration. And Michelle, while you're answering that, if you're able to answer that, maybe I'll ask Howie or Giro, if you're able to provide a hyperlink to the new publication you've released on this issue of operations during COVID, that would, in the chat box, that would be great. But Michelle, are you able to address the question from Iran?
Thank you, Gemma. So for the question of Iran, what we did to persuade our respondents and the enumerators to conduct the survey is that we provide for the enumerators, we provided them the proper guidelines on how to ensure that we are safe from doing the enumeration, and we have provided them the personal protective equipment during the enumeration. For the families, we are lucky enough that our government is also, or the persons in the IATF or the Interagency Task Force on COVID-19 are supportive enough because they know or they have or they recognize the need of the statistics on the labor market, particularly to have the impact of COVID-19 on the labor market. So they provided us exemptions from the restrictions. So the PSA enumerators have the IATF guidelines wherein we are provided the exemption to conduct the survey on their area, and also with the help of the local government units wherein they help us to communicate to the people in their area that there will be PSA going to their area to conduct the survey. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Michelle. And I also noted that I really draw people's attention to the chat box too. Howie from the UN DESA Stats Division has just shared with us an excellent document on guidance of dealing with statistical operations in household surveys. And I really do draw everybody's attention to that document. It really is extremely well written and has got some excellent advice on how to deal with things like encouraging response, dealing with households and families during the COVID-19. I also at this stage, I'm conscious I'm going to wrap up now. I really do appreciate everybody for joining us today. I just want to mention one thing, and then I'm going to hand over to you, Howie, to close us, you and Gero. Next week, the UN Statistics Division, DESA Stats Division, are holding an expert group meeting on the impact of COVID-19 on population censuses. So population censuses is one of our biggest household surveys, if you like. And many of you are either currently in the midst of your census or planning for your census. And I would strongly encourage you. I'm very much looking forward to this expert group meeting next week, being led by New York Stats Division. If any of you have not received an invitation to that expert group meeting, please reach out to me or to Howie. We would be happy to put you in contact with the organisers and get you an invite. It's a virtual event and during the week of 9th of February. So the impact of COVID on population census, please do get in touch with us if you have not received an invitation to that yet. But thank you very much for really interesting talks, very great practices from Philippines, Malaysia, from South Korea and from the Papua New Guinea. Very different context, shows you the diversity of our region, diversity of our statistical systems, and some great work that's being done by the Inter-Secretariat Working Group to share best practices with you all. It's been a pleasure to be with you today, and I'll now hand back to Howie and Gero to close us for the afternoon. Thank you. Howie.
Hi, I would like to invite our co-chair, Gero. Please, Gero, can you?
Yeah, thank you. No, I'd like to again thank everyone. I mean, I think it's been very useful also for me to know more about the region. As I was mentioning before, I think the Inter-Secretariat Working Group has been created to help you. So we would like to hear from you more about how the group can better support your work. I think we are in a situation like we just with the pandemic brought us into a situation that in a way has highlighted a lot of the challenges that we face, but also a lot of the opportunities. I mean, I think there's a lot of opportunity. I heard many things that make me more positive. So if you think about what Nora was mentioning about that now national statistical agencies are more involved in policy dialogue, that's probably something that didn't happen before. And this is something also that emerged from the survey of NSOs that we conducted with the UNSD in collaboration with the regional commissions. That one of the findings was exactly that. Many countries, many NSOs in many countries are now a lot more involved with policymakers. They've been asked to be part of commissions, of special commissions. So I think this is, to me, it's a positive sign. It's something that it's an opportunity that is important to take advantage of. Also, what I see in all of this, what we have seen in all of this, and it's also a lot less risk averse. Like I think there is a lot more a better inclination towards risk, towards experimentation. And again, that is, to me, those are positive signs that unfortunately force by a dramatic situation, but nevertheless, very positive things that can come out of this tragic situation. So I think we have a lot of work to do. We're here to help, and so you let us know. Thank you again, and thanks, Gemma. Great work, great partnership. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Gero. Thank you, Howie, and thanks to the whole stats team there in New York. You can head to bed now. It's about 12:30 in the morning, so please rest, and we'll complete our day here in beautiful Asia and the Pacific. Thank you again, everybody.
Thank you.
It's been great having you. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.